this is video file 2 for Helen Marley. So I'm just going to move on to the observations now, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is the flat roof here on the most recent extension to the rear of the property. Now this, in general, a flat roof that is this flat should really be done with a bituminous felt, like a full membrane or something similar. One of the things that you wouldn't do is you wouldn't put slates on it. Now the builder, they actually did put slates on this area, and the reason you don't put slates on an area like this is driving rain will let's take a sloped area first. The minimum slope that you're allowed to put slates, fibre cement slates, is about 25 degrees, and the reason you don't go any flatter than that is because driving rain will push and penetrate up through between the slates in stormy conditions, and it will penetrate into the roof. So this has gone far too far in that it's gone flat. I'm not sure why they decided to do it, but it's this is another photograph of the same flat roof area, and it's almost flat. There's a slight fall on it for drainage, but it's not enough. So this is just an extract from a document that I have talking about rafter pitches and lap lengths requirements, but it talks about the minimum rafter pitch for a fibre cement slate as being 25 degrees. So you can't go any flatter. Now it is actually causing some problems internally. This is a photograph internally of the flat roof, and there is moisture penetration in this area here. The next page gives us a close-up here. You can see the staining there there's actually moisture penetrating through that flat roof there, and that's going to continue. So really the only way to resolve that is to replace that slated roof with some sort of a membrane, whether it be asphalt or something more suited or more typical for a flat roof construction, because rainwater will continue to come through. Even if it doesn't become a structural problem, you might just have staining on the ceiling that you're constantly painting out, and it's not the way. Now the other problem with the flat roof is, now I discussed this briefly in video 1. This is a wall plate here. You see the timber, we call it a wall plate at the top here, but it's timber, it's a timber runner. And basically that timber is used to connect all of the subsequent timbers, these timber joists up here. And generally what you would do with a wall plate nowadays is you would strap it down. You put a galvanized strap that straps that down to the wall, and it goes down a few blocks and it mobilizes a few blocks, so that if there's ever wind uplift from stormy conditions, that these straps hold the roof down. So the next page shows a typical detail of oftentimes how you might hold down. So this is what I'm talking about here. You can see here, that's a wall plate, and you have this galvanized strap that comes over and goes down the wall. So it helps to hold this strap to the wall, and then it also allows the additional timbers to be nailed or fixed into this wall plate. So that's just typical details there for holding down methods. Now what they've done in your particular house, in this dwelling here, is they've just sort of created a bed of mortar either side of the wall plate to hold it down, which is not sufficient. Now that was done in the back in the 1950s in the original dwelling. You can see where they've done a similar thing. They've actually bedded the wall plate in the wall, but it probably works in that location, but in this location it won't work too well, because there's large window openings and there isn't enough holding down this wall plate. So I would like to put in additional straps to hold down that wall plate. Now okay, so the next defect that I want to discuss is just at the rear of the property here, when I came on site, there was quite significant vegetation growth at the back of the property, so I had to clear it all away because I wanted to find the drainage and the septic tank and all the other. Now, there was a tree that had grown here pretty much very close to the building, very tight to the building. The roots of it were, the tree trunk was about here, and it was about it was up to about here, and it had come up and it had damaged the gutter, and the gutter bellies in that location. You can't really see it in this photograph, but it bellies, so you can see it in this photograph here. This bracket has been damaged and the gutter bellies down there, and it's holding water and leaking water, and as a result this whole area, this wall was saturated. Now it took me, I was just wondering why it had happened, but it was basically because, number one, the gutter was so damaged, is not getting much sunlight because it was all covered in shrubbery, and as well as that, drainage at the bottom is not, it was never finished, or there's no drainage put in here. The drains or the ground needs to slope away from the dwelling so that the rainwater can get a path to get away, so that it's not ponding adjacent to the building. So all of those problems with ponding water and with a damaged gutter had caused dampness in this area. And if we go on here to, this is basically a photograph. That's the tree trunk there. There was kind of 3 separate tree trunks there, and they're removed now, so it'll hopefully slowly dry up, but it mightn't dry up too much because the gutter is still damaged and this ground area is still not graded properly. Internally, you can see that it had caused dampness here and it has caused dampness here, and hopefully that will eventually dry out, but the gutter needs to be repaired quickly. And drainage has not been finished yet at the back, but when it's finished, then the ground will need to slope away from the building so that the rainwater can get away and it's not ponding. Now, there was another problem with rainwater penetration through the roof. Now, I did say that the roof has been replaced. Like, the roof slates have been replaced. All of the roof slates have been replaced, and the sarking membrane has been done. But there are a couple of areas where water is still coming in. This is the gable wall here, the southeast gable wall, and you can see there the timber is saturated. And this is kind of an ongoing problem that needs to be resolved. So if we take an external view, you can see here, this is the top of the gable wall, basically. That's the top of the poured concrete wall, and it's quite weathered and eroded. And I think that water is actually slowly seeping down through that wall. It's one possibility that that's what's happening. And I think the top of that wall needs to be repaired, effectively needs to be recast to give a smoother surface where the rainwater can run off. We also need to check to make sure that the gutter is not holding water, because that can cause problems internally as well. So those are 2 things that we need to check. And just this photograph here, this is the photograph of the northeast gable wall, and it shows the condition of the top of the northeast gable wall is much better. It's nice and smooth, and the rainwater will run off, and it won't it's not as much of a weathered surface, so rainwater won't penetrate through as much. And because of that, this wall internally was dry. There was no problems here. So next, I'm just going to briefly discuss the chimney. This is the chimney. This is the southeast chimney. Now you can see that a series of holes was drilled along here, shown by the yellow arrows. And basically those holes were drilled so that reinforcing bars could be threaded through. Those reinforcing bars were threaded through, and on the that's a close-up there. On the next page you can see those are the reinforcing bars there. There's 1, there's 2, there's 3. So those reinforcing bars were put in so that material, this kind of fibrous material, fireproof fibrous material, could be sort of used to close up that large chimney up and it was closed up because they've installed a flue liner, this metal flue liner. And I suppose they installed the metal flue liner because the existing chimney, it's structurally sound, but they didn't want to use it as a fireplace anymore because it's probably not airtight. There is some heavy staining on the outside from use of the fire, so that's why they wanted to use the the flue liner. And these flue liners are not new. They were installed and have been in use, and you can see from the staining on them that they have been in use, but they're probably still in good condition and can be used, and they're okay. Now, the other thing I was going to mention was the chimney is, let's say, you can see the staining here on the chimney. There's staining here, and that's basically from use of the fire. That the soot is going to seep through and cause staining on the chimney. But the chimney is stable and it's in reasonable condition. It is, again, it's poured concrete, shuttered poured concrete on site. There were areas where it had deteriorated significantly and required repair, and they have repaired. This was the shutter that was used to repair. They would have scraped away some of the concrete that was deteriorated so much that it was possible to scrape away, and then they've kind of repaired it with concrete. We'll see a close-up view on the next page. That's a close-up view of the area where they've repaired it with concrete, and that's quite normal to do it like that, just to do local repairs on very damaged areas, and it still looks good and sound and watertight from the roof. The other side of this chimney stack, again, you can see the staining. Now that staining is from use of the fire, and basically soot and whatever else has seeped through and has caused that staining. That's quite common to see, but it's not a major concern. It's still structurally sound. It's been lined with a flue liner now. Local repairs have been done. Again, you can see the concrete, the fresh concrete at the top. Local repairs have been done at the top because there was probably too much deterioration, but otherwise is in good condition and can be retained. I'm going to stop this video here, and in the next video I'll talk about the northwest chimney.